Let's go to James in Barnes. James, what do you want to tell us?
Wes,
Good morning.
Hi, good morning. Wes, I think that the bigger picture here is not that morally, clearly, this is incorrect, and we all know that. But I think that the bigger picture is actually what happened before this came to light, is his total lack of empathy with people that are suffering. And that was clear when he was on LBC, actually, and he took a phone call from this woman who was telling him that she was taking 3 jobs and she had 2 kids and sometimes she couldn't eat so that they could eat. And what could he do to help her? And all he could say was, "Oh, yes, I know it's very difficult when, with children."
Yeah, no, I heard the call.
That actually shocked me.
Yeah.
And I think that the lack of hope that he offers people who are suffering, and the fact that he's allowed the energy companies, whereas France is capped it at 4% or whatever it is. And I think that you had a caller on earlier, Wes, before the news at 10:30, who was talking about the Labour Party and how you shouldn't allow yourselves to be distracted by this, because the bigger picture is the suffering of the people in who are the biggest poverty crisis since I've been alive.
Yeah.
And I think that the sad thing is about your party, and you've got a lot of good people now, is that David Lammy, and I love him, I think he's a fabulous, wonderful man, but he was on LBC and he was taking calls from people giving their experiences of how they were going to suffer, and they were.
Yeah.
And he said, "What would you like me to ask Richie Sunak?" And I thought, I was incredulous. He should know what he needs to ask Richie Sunak. And I think your party, and that's the problem you've got, you should be nailing these people. And I think you're allowing this this is sidetracking, I think that the Labour Party, personally.
Well, just in defence of David Lammy, I think he probably does know what he wants to ask. But of course, when we're sat in this chair, we're also keen to get the opinions of the broader public. And I think particularly, I feel in this particularly this morning as a Labour politician and member of the shadow cabinet, I want to make sure that people can call in who don't agree and who don't vote Labour, so that they know they're not going to get shouted down. That's what James is for, and he'll be back soon after his holiday. But I think, to be honest, I see these issues as being linked, actually, because I think the way in which the Chancellor, the way in which the Health Secretary have managed their tax affairs and the kind of income that they have and the way that they've managed it is one of the things that makes them out of touch and means they don't act in the interests of most people. And you mentioned people who are particularly struggling at the moment. I mentioned earlier the fact that off the back of the spring statement, there's around 500,000 more children who will be living in absolute poverty. I think what I'm seeing more and more is it's not just people who are in the hardest poverty, the harshest poverty, that are really struggling. I mean, they are suffering. I think there are lots of people on what I'd consider to be middle incomes at the moment who are noticing their taxes going up, their energy bills going up, the food shop going up, the petrol going up, who are also now having to make sacrifices and are beginning to worry in a way that we haven't had in this country for a while. And I think for me, the link between what we're talking about this morning in terms of Rishi Sunak and his family and the Health Secretary and the way they've managed their taxes, it's about the kind of world they operate in, the kind of values they apply to their politics and to their decision making, and whose interests they serve. Because I can tell you now, there is absolutely no way that a Labour Chancellor delivering a spring statement in the kind of backdrop we've got at the moment would have ended up with a situation where independent analysts like the Resolution Foundation would say that 500,000 more children would be plunged into poverty. It's an anathema to us. And one of the things I really struggle with is there's often this perception that politicians are out of touch. And what I'd say about it, you don't need to be from a working class family like me to understand the struggles that people are going through if, as a member of parliament, you're knocking on doors in your constituency and you're holding your advice surgeries. Because we see it come through. We see it in our inboxes. We see it with the people who come to see us on a Friday afternoon in our surgeries. And people are really struggling. I have not seen anything like it. I was in a food bank just the other week in Colchester where they were telling me that NHS staff and NHS nurses are going into food banks. And I just don't understand how we've got to this point as a country where people who are in work are also in poverty. And I don't think anyone would imagine that, working for the NHS is a bad job or a poorly paid job. But here we are in a situation where people who are on lower incomes in the NHS doing jobs in nursing, porters, other jobs, are struggling. They're really struggling to make ends meet. And that's the link I see with the two issues and what I think really needs to change. James, thank you very much for your call.